Hello, thank you for joining me for this presentation on captive orchids used in entertainment, welfare impacts, and future considerations. If you have any questions after the presentation, please feel free to contact me at the email listed here. Looking ahead at what we'll be diving into today, we're going to first look at the history of orcas used for entertainment and then review the laws in place to protect them in the U.S. Next, we'll review the general biological needs of orcas, which will provide us with a framework for understanding what is necessary for adequate care and welfare. Then we'll discuss the main welfare issues for captive orcas. With all these factors in mind, we'll then be able to take a deep look into a case study using Lolita, an orca who has been captive for over 50 years, as an example. We'll finish up by considering future implications for captive orcas and reviewing some alternatives for cetaceans used in entertainment. Orcas in captivity rose to prominence in 1961, and according to the Whale and Dolphin Conservation, 166 orcas have been taken from the wild since then. There are currently 58 orcas held in captivity worldwide, with them being the third most common captive cetacean following dolphins and beluga whales. One-third of the world's captive orcas are in the U.S. SeaWorld is the biggest exhibitor, with a current total of 19 orcas across their 3 parks in California, Texas, and Florida. Miami Seaquarium currently only has 1 orca in captivity. We'll discuss that solitary individual when we examine our case study. Despite these numbers, public awareness about animal welfare issues has led to decreased support for orca captivity. A 2012 independent poll found that only 1 in 4 Americans supported orca captivity due to concerns over animal welfare. While most captive orcas live in entertainment parks, their captivity is argued to be justifiable due to contributions to education and conservation. Proponents argue that marine parks contribute to public education through informational programs, therefore increasing interest in conservation. However, one study found that less than 50% of parks with orcas provided any information on conservation, with displays lacking in-depth information on natural habitats and behavior. Also of note, shows involving orcas performing tricks and other unnatural behaviors can contribute to anthropomorphism, thereby misinforming the public. In terms of conservation, some argue that captivity is essential for conducting research and developing wild conservation initiatives, and captive breeding programs are argued to be necessary to preserve genetic diversity and help supplement wild populations if needed in the future. However, studies suggest that while captive environments can provide experimental rigor and logistical control, they meet limitations in external validity, impose stress on the captive animals, thus altering results, and exploit the populations from which they are captured. In terms of legal protections for captive orcas in the U.S., there are 2 main laws, the Animal Welfare Act and the Marine Mammal Protection Act. The AWA of 1966 sets forth standards for the care of cetaceans, including facility design, space, water quality, nutrition, and social grouping. Importantly, this act addresses the minimum requirements for care, not the ideal requirements. Environmental enrichment is not mentioned in its standards, and the act does not ban orca performances. The AWA's space standards requires pools be at least 48 feet in diameter, which is roughly double the length of an average adult orca, with a depth of 12 feet, roughly half the length of an average adult orca. SeaWorld and Miami Seaquarium are considered licensed exhibitors under the AWA. Now, the Marine Mammal Protection Act prohibits the taking, as in hunting, killing, capture, or harassment of any marine mammals without prior authorization. The MMPA does issue permits for the taking of wild marine animals for the public display, scientific research, or species survival. Some states have enacted further legislation. The California Orca Protection Act passed in 2016, banning orcas in captivity, breeding of captive orcas, and entertainment-based performances. The nature of the law does allow SeaWorld's California facility to keep its current whales, however they will not be able to breed or acquire more. Other efforts have been unfortunately unsuccessful. The Federal Orca Act of 2017 sought to prohibit the taking and breeding of orcas for public display, and the Florida Orca Protection Act sought to mimic the stipulations of California's law. Unfortunately, neither of those bills passed. Orcas are very complex mammals, so for the purpose of this presentation, we'll just review some basic biology regarding movement and social behavior, as these 2 aspects seem to have the most impact on the welfare of captive individuals. In the wild, orcas will easily swim over 40 miles a day, foraging for food, following their prey, and often diving hundreds of feet below the ocean surface. Orcas possess advanced neurobiological foundations, including relatively large brain size, expanded neocortex, elaborated limbic system, and complex corticalization, correlating with complex cognitive capacities that have been observed in various ways. Research studying orca behavior in front of a mirror found that orcas have the advanced ability of self-recognition and self-awareness. Orcas are highly social animals that live in tight-knit family groups known as pods. Pods are matriarchal, and social relationships begin at birth with strong emotional bonds between mothers and offspring. These social relationships are important for proper psychological development. Field observations of wild orcas reveal that they go through grieving processes by which they will tend to dead individuals, push them afloat, and carry them around, emphasizing emotional capabilities and the importance of social relationships. Pods develop their own unique dialects through distinct vocalizations. These dialects are integral to another aspect of orca social life, which is cooperative hunting. As apex predators at the top of the food chain, they cooperate to consume a carnivorous diet primarily of fish, small mammals, and birds. Cooperative hunting, prey preference, and other learned cultural traditions are passed down through generations. These complex capabilities indicate the inherent biological need for an enriched social environment. With these biological foundations in mind, we'll be able to easily identify the main welfare issues associated with orca captivity. Due to their highly social nature and strong family bonds, wild capture disrupts the social network of entire pods. Captured individuals are sold and transported to differing locations, calves are taken from their mothers prematurely, and the remaining wild individuals are left scattered. The AWA does require social companionship for cetaceans, however, housing individuals from different pods who speak different dialects in artificially created social groups can lead to frustration and conflicts. In the wild, there is room for avoidance behavior to avoid issues, but close quarters in captivity does not allow for this and can lead to aggressive conflicts. Confinement, barren enclosures, and lack of enrichment are key issues for captive orcas. As discussed previously, the AWA requires pools to be at least 48 feet in diameter with a depth of 12 feet. Given the large size of orcas, these space parameters infringe on regular freedom of movement. The topography of the enclosures themselves contribute to boredom, as they are typically constructed of smooth concrete without interesting features that may otherwise provide enrichment. This environment doesn't allow orcas to perform natural behaviors including diving and roaming, which normally spans many miles in the wild, synchronized dives with pod mates, cooperative hunting, and social dialect development. All of these factors leads to chronic stress, frustration, and stereotypical behaviors. Also, as mentioned in the previous slide, orcas have the cognitive capacity for self-awareness. In captivity, the inability to control the main aspects of one's life and environment can lead to learned helplessness and depressive behavior, which is further reflected by stereotypical behavior. For captive orcas, reports of oral stereotypies are numerous, including biting and chewing on hard tank surfaces, toys, and steel gates. Tooth damage as a result of this is extremely common. One study analyzing 29 captive orca found that all 29 individuals exhibited dental injuries, with up to 75% of their teeth showing signs of damage. Dental pathologies increase disease vulnerability as bacteria and other toxins enter the bloodstream, lowering overall immune function. Logging behavior, where individuals float motionless for long periods of time at the water's surface, is another predominant stereotype observed. This stationary behavior is especially dangerous as it leaves individuals vulnerable to mosquito bites and mosquito-transmitted diseases. SLEV and West Nile virus are persistent health risks for captive orcas in the U.S., and these individuals are often kept in low-latitude facilities with high levels of ultraviolet radiation, further reducing immune system capabilities. Self-harming has also been identified in captive orcas, with individuals engaging in self-injurious behaviors such as banging their heads against the sides of their tanks. Training and performances are a welfare concern as unnatural behaviors are displayed and contact with humans is encouraged. During training, food is used as a primary reinforcer to condition the orcas to perform tricks, and in some cases, hunger is deliberately induced so that the individuals cooperate. Finally, according to a 2010 report, the mortality rate for captive orcas is double that occurring naturally in the wild. Infectious diseases remain the primary cause of death as captivity, stress, and unnatural environments lead to weakened immune systems and opportunistic infections. With these issues in mind, we'll apply them to a case study using Lolita, an orca captive at Miami Seaquarium in Florida, as an example. Lolita was captured in 1970 off the coast of Washington state, so this would be before the MMPA was passed in 1972, which regulated the taking of marine animals. She was one of approximately 80 individuals captured, meaning a large social pod was disrupted. According to an account of the event, the orcas split into two groups, with one group acting as a decoy to drive the hunters away from the second group of mothers and calves. Ultimately, the capture team caught on and used explosives to disorient the whales, and worked to corral them into shallow coves where the calves were then separated from their mothers. Onlookers reported hearing calls of distress from the second decoy group, giving us a first-hand glimpse into the tight-knit emotional and social bonds of pods. Lolita was immediately sold to Miami Seaquarium, where she's lived ever since. At 57 years of age, she has the title of being the longest-living wild-caught orca in captivity. Lolita also has the title of living in the world's smallest orca tank. As you can see in the bottom image on the left, her tank is 80 feet by 35 feet with a solid surface-to-floor obstruction in the center. Now, as we discussed, the AWA stipulates that pools need to have a minimum diameter of 48 feet in either direction. Activists argue that Lolita's tank does not meet this requirement due to the center obstruction, which results in a diameter of only 35 feet. However, the AWA enforcement agency contends that the requirements are fulfilled as Lolita can swim around the obstruction when the gates are open. The enclosure is also constructed of smooth concrete without features, plants, or shapes that may otherwise provide enrichment. And unfortunately, Lolita is not the only individual who lives in this subpar enclosure. Lolita was initially placed with an orca named Hugo, and the pair performed and lived together for 10 years. Hugo displayed extreme self-mutilating stereotypical behaviors, repeatedly bashing his head into the sides of his tank, causing himself injuries. Devastatingly, in 1980, Hugo repeatedly rammed the walls of his tank until he died, officially from a cerebral aneurysm. Since Hugo's death, Lolita has been isolated from other orcas. Instead, dolphins were moved into her tank to provide companionship. As discussed, appropriate social grouping is an important consideration affecting the overall mental and physical health of cetaceans. Unfortunately, a federal inspection report has documented sustained aggression between Lolita and the various dolphins that have been cycled into her closure, indicating social grouping is inadequate. This cramped environment, lacking enrichment, adequate social relationships, and opportunities to express normal behavior, has resulted in 50 years of chronic stress, frustration, and stereotypical behavior. Field observations indicate Lolita habitually logs in one section of her tank, and her teeth display signs of damage. These behaviors, along with another federal inspection report that found the facility failed to provide adequate shade structures, leaves Lolita exposed to mosquito-transmitted diseases and ultraviolet radiation, reducing immune system function. And a February 2022 report documented that Lolita suffered from pneumonia and nutritional deficiencies. Lolita has performed twice a day, every day for 50 years now, likely using food deprivation as a training strategy. The facility has been cited for reducing Lolita's food intake, correlating with the nutritional deficiencies mentioned previously. Now, what does the future hold for Lolita? Well, many advocates hope that she won't have to live out her remaining days at Miami Seaquarium and continue to urge federal agencies to revoke their exhibitor's license. One option up for debate is wild reintroduction. According to scientists at the Whale Center for Research, some of her family members are still alive and living off the coast of Washington state where she was captured. And they report that Lolita still speaks in the dialectical tones of her pod, meaning that she has a better chance of successfully rejoining her family. Despite this, there are some obstacles, including ensuring that she is free of transferable pathogens and strong enough to survive the long-distance transport. Another major obstacle as well is convincing her captors to release her. A second option would be to release her to a seaside sanctuary, which we'll discuss further in the next slide. And just to flag up on the right, that is Lolita and Hugo performing together in the 1970s. Going forward, some expert recommendations can help alleviate welfare issues for orcas currently in captivity. Adding enrichment requirements to the AWA, such as design features mimicking the ocean, can help prevent boredom and stress. Although it's possible that these features may only be a short-term solution as individuals become familiar and bored of the stagnant shapes. Increasing AWA space requirements from 48 feet in length to 330 feet in length with an increased depth of 50 feet may allow some level swimming and diving behavior to occur. Other considerations are improving shade structures and enacting proactive mosquito control programs to reduce disease transmission, and adding retreat spaces to exhibits, allowing individuals the ability to freely choose to enter spaces away from public viewing. While these recommendations may help alleviate some issues of captivity, they cannot mimic the expansive natural ocean habitat. Eliminating cetaceans in captivity entirely is a preferable alternative. One company, Edge Innovations, has developed hyper-realistic animatronics that swim, dive, and sound like real dolphins. Pictured on this slide is one of them, which weighs nearly 550 pounds, is just over 8 feet in length, and has skin made from medical-grade silicone. In addition to replacing live cetaceans in theme parks, they're working to include these robots in film and television. Groups such as the Whale Sanctuary Project work to construct large fenced-off ocean sanctuaries, allowing rescued and retired individuals to live somewhat naturally, while visitor centers and viewing spots allow for public education to take place. This is an option that many hope Lolita can be released to in the future. Finally, to allow research of cetaceans to continue, interspecies collaborative research is proposed using free-roaming individuals that may choose to participate in interactions, allowing researchers to analyze them under a natural setting while respecting their autonomy. In summary, artificial enclosures cannot mimic the vast ocean habitat that supports marine mammals' essential natural behaviors including swimming, diving, cooperative hunting, and forming of social bonds. The conditions of captivity lead to widespread physical and mental health issues as seen by stereotypical behavior, illnesses, and increased mortality rate. While improving conditions of enclosures can help alleviate some issues, this is not a long-term solution. Eliminating cetacean captivity and replacing it with animatronics or seaside sanctuaries is essential for animal well-being. If this presentation has spoken to you and you're wondering how you can get involved, I've included some links here to various petitions working to retire Lolita to a sanctuary and end captivity for all cetaceans. It's also good to keep in mind to avoid patronizing establishments that exhibit cetaceans for entertainment and profit. Here's a list of references that I use, which may be used as a reading list if you'd like to look deeper into this topic. And thank you very much for your time.